Let's begin, shall we, with our Dragon's Den session. I'd like you to switch your mobile phones to silent once again, please. If you're tweeting this next particular session, and there might be reason to do so. IPSE PC16 is the hashtag, as it has been today. Right, big difference between this and the actual real Dragon's Den is one, that they own the copyright. The other is that we're not looking for money this time. We're looking for ideas. Our dragons aren't rich enough to offer up any cash of their own. What they are able to offer is validation, to say to the people who are going to pitch their ideas that their idea is a good one and is worth pursuing. So the dragons, and I'll introduce them in a second, they are policy experts and people who know the world of self-employment well, and they're on the lookout for great new ideas to make the life of the self-employed that much better and easier. They will be pitched ideas by contestants who think they have those solutions. Each of the pitchers, and there are 4 of them, they will have 3 minutes. After each pitch, the dragons will interrogate the contestants. They will have 4 minutes for that. And then I will ask you, the audience, to vote on whether you think the idea is good or not. And we will ask you whether you are in or whether you are out. And you will do the voting using the little keypads that are on the chairs around you. So if I could ask you to locate those keypads right away, that will save us a vital seconds when we get to it. So join me, please, first of all, in welcoming the dragons. They are Emma Jones, Penny Haslam, and Professor Andrew Burke. Let's give them a round of applause. Penny Haslam is a broadcaster and public speaker. Professor Andrew Burke is chair of IPSE's Centre for Self-Employment, and Emma Jones is well known, of course, as the head of Enterprise Nation, a great champion of entrepreneurs and the self-employed everywhere. We will have 4 pitches. They are from Brighton Fuse on business banking, from Matt Darling on no free work for creative freelancers, from Jane Bowles on work hubs with childcare facilities, and from Dave Jackson on training for the construction sector. We welcome, first of all, Brighton Fuse to talk about business banking for the self-employed, and you have 3 minutes. Feel free to use either the podium or the microphone that is over here. And your 3 minutes starts now.
Hello, my name is Roberto Camerani. My name is not Brighton Fuse. Brighton Fuse is the name of a research project that we carried on 1.5 years ago together with our colleagues from the Brighton University. I'm from Sussex University, and today I'm presenting my idea, which is about a freelancer-friendly bank account. Okay, so we talked a lot about finance. So the idea is based on the results of this project, which has been funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council. So the first thing is that this project studied the role of freelancers in Brighton's creative and digital cluster. We selected a sample of freelancers, we interviewed them, we submitted a survey to them, and the overall picture is quite optimistic. So we found that they are pretty wealthy, they do pretty well in terms of earnings, their well-being is above the average, well-being meaning subjective well-being, and 94% of them, they would like to be freelancers, they wouldn't switch to an employee job, okay? However, they still face some difficulties, some factors hindering their work and so on, and among the top 3 factors, guess which are the most important ones? Among the top 3 factors that are badly influencing their work, 2 of them have to do with finance, okay? Not actually access to finance, but the 2 factors are irregular income, so problems of cash flow, and the second is late payments. Okay, so late payments is not their fault. Okay, but still is a problem that is really affecting them.
1 minute left.
Okay. Well, the idea is to have a freelancers-friendly bank account in which the keyword is flexibility, and this bank account should deal with both short-term cash flow or lumpy income streams. So short-term problems with cash flow, long-term planning, including pension schemes and so on, but also some flexible, it has to be flexible enough to deal with life events such as illness or maternity, paternity leave, and so on. Yeah, I'm fine. I
Thank
can
you.
answer more questions.
Dragon, your questions.
So I have a question. So how would it work? So a bank account is you put money in, you draw money out.
Yeah.
Why would this be any different to a regular bank account?
The thing is a more holistic approach to banking. Okay, so now freelancers usually they have to choose between an employee or an individual bank account or a business bank account. None of them really fit with their needs. So what we think is that there should be something in the middle, something that has to do that deals with more issues that these people face. We talk a lot about work-life balance. Work-life balance for freelancers has a financial component, okay? Because they need to plan their future, they need to plan for periods in which they have no income, and these bank accounts should be flexible enough to deal with all these issues.
I'd say that's called a savings account, but...
Thank you. Next question.
What appetite have you seen from the high street banks for such an account?
We haven't asked high street banks, but IPSE, I think they had some preliminary. No, it's not here today. They had preliminary talks with some banks, and apparently they said that they were interested. In the end, it's about selling more services. It's just better and more flexible services.
Do you think that's a drawback that they haven't had those conversations yet?
I can't see the difference between this bank account and a savings account and a current account. For me, I couldn't see an advantage. I just need a friendly bank who goes, you can have that big overdraft this month, but as long as you pay it back next month or next year, next decade in some cases. That's just me. But yeah, I think friendly is great, but for freelancers especially, not for me.
Okay.
Explain the difference so that she understands.
The thing is, I think that the existing banking service could be improved, I think that still it's not just about paying in money and getting back money. You might be able to calibrate these payments a little bit more and choose between pension or other types of, or mortgage repayment, other type of things. And then, with state intervention perhaps, or a more insurance type of approach, like a risk pooling approach, you might really be able to give more services, more finance services to freelancers.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, with 4.9 million freelancers and banks wanting plenty of customers, I find it hard to believe that banks haven't thought of this already. So I guess the reason it's probably not there is the fact that it's a loss-making proposition. I mean, if the banks say no, is that the end of the idea, or are you suggesting that banks there should be some sort of government subsidy or something?
I suggest that if this population of freelancers still grows, the problems that now just a moderate percentage of people are facing will be faced by much more people, and then someone, so banks or the state, should intervene and should really help these people to face these problems.
But surely that's just bad cash flow management, is it not? I mean, if you look at freelance earnings, it's roughly about 2.5 times equivalent earnings of employees.
Yeah.
In terms of this community.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the reason freelancer paid that premium is so that they can manage between
True.
those peaks and troughs. So,
Yeah, so I'm adding to the list of services some education. So we interviewed some very highly skilled programmers. For example, one of them was earning more than £100,000 a year, which is a decent amount of money. And he was very poor in finance. He had no idea. He said, I'm very bad in managing money. He really admitted that. Okay, so I think that being professional on a certain environment, on a certain subject, doesn't mean that you are a professional. You know how to deal with money. They might not know what's a cash flow statement, these kind of things.
yeah. I mean, I certainly, we've already bailed the banks out once, and now we're paying higher taxes for it and paying higher costs. So we don't want to do it again. So as long as they can do it profitably, I'm happy with it. But
There are a lot of
if
sectors.
it needs subsidy
It's not about subsidy. There are a lot of sectors. They receive some subsidies or tax relief. It's difficult to identify freelancers because they work under very different legal status and so on. Maybe a way to help them is through the banking system.
Thank you. Emma, last question, if you have one.
Well, no, I was just more going to make a statement that what I think that you've come on to is definitely for freelancers, there's a need for pensions, there's a need for mortgage, which is really hard for self-employed to get. But I think you've almost kind of centred on the wrong product. So I think the banks deal with it in an okay way, but pensions and mortgages and insurance, I think it's almost, I would look at other aspects of financial services to say that's where the opportunity could be.
Thank you, Penny. Last thought if you have it.
I like the idea. I would like to see a more holistic approach to freelancers from a financial point of view from the banks. I don't think they are capable of it based on what I've seen over the last 5 years in terms of lending and responding to challenging people like, you know, the non-workers, non-employed people, self-employed people. So I like it. It's friendly. But no, it's not really going to go much further than just this room, I don't think.
Thank you. Audience, get ready to vote, please. Penny, are you in or out?
I'm out, sorry.
I mean, as long as the taxpayer doesn't have to subsidise it.
Emma?
I'm out.
Only one in on the panel. Audience, in or out, please. 1, A for in, B for out.
Oh, the suspense.
10 seconds left to vote, please.
Poor Roberto.
5, 4, 3, there we go.
Oh, wow.
Oh, close.
Oh, very friendly audience.
Congratulations. Our first pitch.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Our second pitch is Matt Darling, who's a freelancer, who's going to talk about creating a code of conduct and ensuring that freelancers are not asked to give free work. You have 3 minutes starting now.
Thank you. 9 years ago, I was a freelance photographer in crippling debt. I owed a lot of money to a lot of people. I was living on floors or sofas if I was lucky, and any money I could get together would go towards feeding myself. Perversely, I was still working for my single client who was neglecting to pay over 11 grand's worth of outdated invoices. And not long after that, they went bankrupt. This story is a fairly familiar one in the creative freelance sector. And this particular story of mine made the papers. The consequence of which was that people came out of the woodwork and said very similar things had happened to them too. The exploitation of creative freelancers has become an epidemic so severe that the next generation believes unpaid work is a rite of passage to get into the creative sectors such as fashion, music, journalism, or even the arts. From writers to hairstylists, a lot of companies are asking creative professionals to work not for cash, but for experience, exposure, the promise of paid work in the future, or even prestige. Companies are preying on the fears of these freelancers, thinking that if they don't take this opportunity, the guy behind them is going to do it instead. Should this trend continue, we're going to be left with creative freelancers who are lost in the industry and only a handful of financially supported creatives, almost hobbyists, who will be continually feeding the exploitation for commercial gain. The creative industry is one of the largest in the sector, and if we're not careful and we continue to supply these vacuous opportunities to creative minds, we are in danger of losing an entire generation of talent. To help combat this issue, we've produced a code of conduct on the Freelancer Club website, and we've asked for employers and for freelancers to sign and vow not to apply or post unpaid work in the future. We see this as the perfect vehicle for the Small Business Commissioner to champion, for the Code of Conduct to be published on the government website, for people to start to realize that there is an issue within the creative fields, and for this issue to be exposed to the masses to support creative freelancers in the future. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Dragons?
Sorry, does that give it a raise? Who are we starting with? Okay, great pitch, because I guess it's based on personal experience, so that comes across in your emotion. My question would be, and we're seeing this with the national living wage at the moment, that companies have said, we'll take on the national living wage, but we are going to drop the perks of all of our employees. So something always has to give. How would you encourage, because what you need is everyone to sign up, because if not everybody signs up, the people who've signed up don't do any free work, but you've still got people who do agree to do free work, and they're the ones who get all the opportunities. How would you make this mainstream so that it works for the industry and works for you?
Well, what we've seen is that a lot of times people who are working for free, who seem to think they're going to get something out of it at the end of that, that doesn't come to fruition. So the first thing I think we'd want to do is try to put a little awareness on the subject. Particularly in the creative sectors, there's a lot of naivety as to what one should be doing and what one shouldn't. So I think step one for us would be to clarify that distinction. What is unpaid work? If you're doing something for commercial gain and you're not seeing anything back, well then that's a problem. If you're doing something for exposure or experience, all this needs to be weighed up. So I think first and foremost, awareness and education. If we can get people on board, we'd want to empower the people who back it. We don't want to shine a spotlight negatively on these people who are doing it, rather champion those who have turned around.
Okay.
So if we can empower these guys so that it's more valuable for you to take on someone for a fair wage, well then we'll hopefully start to see a shift in the way things are moving.
Is this like a TripAdvisor for the clients that book us? So if someone didn't pay me, could I type in a review of their late payment into your TripAdvisor code of conduct, and then it would tell others exactly where the land lies with this particular employer?
Well, the idea was not so much to name and shame rather than to applaud people who had come on board. What we would like to see is a report issued with anybody who's a serial offender. We felt this idea of a crusade tapping into companies who just aren't following the law a little vindictive and maybe against the spirit of what we're trying to do. It's not off the table, but I think we'd want to start with the idea of empowering people who were doing it correctly and following the rules.
There are no rules against not paying someone for work if they agree to not get paid, though.
Absolutely
so
not, no.
The assertion has to be on the behalf of the individual.
Yes.
And this is a bubble, I think, a trend following the credit crisis. It's a result of neoliberalism and free hand market forces, which may or may not continue. Mm-hmm. Do you think you have a strong enough network or platform as a freelancer club to spread the word of what it is you want to achieve?
Yeah, I think we do. We started this on change.org to gauge what sort of passion was out there, and within a few weeks we had over 1,000 people sign and say why they were signing. And it was that quote that we found fairly inspirational. People are angry. People are not educated enough on a lot of the not just the rules, but on what's fair, what's morally right, morally wrong. Yeah, I think there's a groundswell here. I think this is the time. And I think we have an opportunity now to start to put the word out and change the way things are moving. I think it's just too much to lose for us to have this conversation where we might not have incredible talent that doesn't come from a wealthy family. That's unacceptable.
2 minutes left for questions, panel.
I just want to be sure that I understand your proposition. I mean, are you essentially saying that a new musician, let's say a new rock band or something like that, that's starting out, will now not be allowed to take up a support slot for an established act and play for free? And likewise, are you saying that somebody who's learning the trade in terms of being a graphic designer will no longer be able to do a brochure or a web page for a startup that's working on a shoe? So essentially, the learning part, the new entrance to the market would be blocked out. Is that what you're saying?
No, and I think this would fall into the grey area that exists, and that's what we want to try to address. There has to come a point, a cut-off point, where somebody starts to earn and say, now I'm ready to be paid. I think if you're self-taught, it comes into the conversation and the point you've made. I think that's very salient. If you're looking to earn while you learn, well then it throws up a different question. I don't think it's a great way forward to prohibit that completely and be so black and white. I think it's going to come down to each individual, and as Penny mentioned, it's two businesses with a contract. Anything can take place between them. So what we'd like to see ultimately is for people to be more aware of the situation, for exploitation to be defined, and to make sure that people can get experience when needed, but ultimately not be exploited for that.
But a live venue that's using, let's say, that's giving support slots to bands and not paying them wouldn't be able to sign up to the charter then, is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think would be against that. The idea that someone is going to be giving up their service or their time for nothing is the problem. So yeah, we'd want someone who would be classified as a professional to be paid as a professional.
What's your view on bartering? So I'll do you a website if you take my photo.
Yeah, for bartering. I think that still has value, and we see a lot of that within our community. People will offer services for product or services for services.
Thank you very much. An important issue. Is this the solution? Penny?
It's a solution which I think will go a long way to helping freelancers and we do work alone in this, helping build our assertiveness when it comes to saying no to projects.
Thank you. In or out?
In.
I like the spirit of it, but I think the implementation will actually cause barriers to entry and actually stop new entrants entering the market. So I'm out.
So I'd put more of the value on showing the value of the creative sector as opposed to we're not going to work for free, but actually we offer so much value that we want paying. But on that basis, I'm in.
2 in, 1 out. Audience, what do you think? Pick up your voting pads, and it's A for in, B for out, and 30 seconds, please. Actually, we don't even need that much time. That's all the votes that we're going to get, I think. So let's see the results. A strong support for that particular pitch from Matt Dunn. Thank you very much. And Dragons, thank you as always for your incisive questioning. The next pitch is from Jane Bowles, who is a PR consultant working in event management and in the grubby world of politics. And she's going to talk about the creation of work hubs with creches for freelancing parents. 3 minutes, starting now.
Good afternoon, Dragons. My pitch is around co-working and childcare. Childcare provision in the work hubs. Childcare is one of the main hurdles faced by female freelancers. According to the ONS, the number of self-employed women is 1.4 million. IPSE research shows that out of that 1.4 million, 287,000 are mothers. With the increase in freelancing mothers and the growth and popularity of work hubs, there is increased interest and uptake in work hubs with childcare, allowing parents to work in the same building, solving transport and logistical problems faced by working parents. The idea is not a new one, but it is not backed by government. My idea is that it should be. The question is, how? Ideas might be ways of government paying for childcare might include, 1, by supporting the providers, by subsidising the childcare provision through a government bursary or fund. 2, allowing parents to use the current childcare vouchers in work hub nurseries. 3, perhaps considering the use of the lottery fund. In the government's culture white paper released in March, there's talk around reallocating lottery funds. This could be a source of funding. The benefits to the economy are huge. According to a Deloitte's report published this week, helping women entrepreneurs could boost the UK economy by £100 billion per annum. In addition, of course, it would encourage more young women into freelancing. Thank you.
Thank you. Dragons, your questions?
Why wouldn't you just put a nursery operator in a work hub? So the nursery operators who do get the benefit of government money that goes towards childcare vouchers, why would you just not put an existing operator in the space?
Well, you could do, but I mean, the point is the provision of childcare within the same environment and allowing the parents the facility, as I pointed out.
Yeah.
Yes, you could do it that way. As I understand it, the ones that are already in being are actually provided by the work hub.
Okay, so it's funny, I've just met a lady who's got a building in the northeast where she's built a creche facility, co-working on the top floor, creche facility on the second, and then there's kind of a community group on the ground floor. So she's operating all of those, but doing it all in one space. And she was saying her issue is the local authorities understanding what a community interest company is. So her nursery is benefiting from the government funding. So I guess my view would be put somebody into the work hub who currently benefits from the childcare vouchers. Do you think that would be a reasonable solution towards?
Yes, possibly.
Okay.
Possibly.
Okay.
Thank you.
I like it. I would love that. And I know lots of freelancing parents, mothers, who do really need that because of the transport to and from a nursery, especially if you've got older kids who are at school with lack of wraparound care. Do you think that the private sector, as Emma has suggested, would be keen to take advantage of anything opening up? Do you think it's just a lack of awareness about this as an option? And work hubs in popularity are cool in Shoreditch, but perhaps not everywhere else.
No, I think it is a very good option for the private sector. But obviously, if it's government backed and there's more, if you like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Firepower?
More encouragement from government. The biggest problem, obviously, is that a lot of women leave the workforce in their early 30s, often because, from an employed job within a company. Many go freelance because that offers them lots of different options from point of view of childcare, whether they're the sandwich generation, whether they're looking after the older generation, the younger generation. It allows them, as we've talked about today, the whole work-life balance. But childcare is a real problem within that. Every time a group of women get together and they talk about the issues they have and the concerns they have, childcare always comes up. And it's something that needs these work hubs that give mothers, invariably mothers, but fathers too, the option of taking their children to the same building. As you say, the whole transport thing, it can be a real juggle trying to juggle that with their kids. So where you have the whole thing under one roof, that obviously improves the situation.
I'm almost stuck to ask a question because I think it's a brilliant idea. I mean, I think childcare is so important to really get the best out of people in a workforce. I'm just wondering where you see the ceiling on this, though. I mean, is it just the creche age groups, or are you thinking of facilities that could take kids that are older, after school kind of things?
After school, absolutely. Yes, because my pitch to you is the nursery age, but I think it probably is something that continues as once children become older, particularly again this whole thing around sort of time scales of schools. Child needs to be collected, there's no options there. So anything that helps people to have continuity within their workspace has got to be advantageous. So I think yes, it could be rolled out to older children.
The only thing recommendation is you should be bolder. I mean, governments throughout the globe make, free land, provide subsidies for industrial estates, for enterprise units, incubators and so on. They do very little for freelancers, and I think putting these two initiatives together, is a huge benefit, and therefore you should be quite open and never mind about, childcare vouchers, of course, but they should be paying for 25% of the building.
This is glowingly positive compared to your scepticism with...
I know, the medication is kicking in for me.
Penny, you wanted to ask?
Jane, you work in political circles. Do you think politicians truly understand that we need a childcare revolution in order to unleash this £100 billion that Deloitte has mentioned into the economy from women who are otherwise trapped, dare I say, for want of a better word, with childcare issues? Do you think they understand?
No. Yes and no. I think as there are more women in Parliament, actually the issues become perhaps more relevant, and perhaps ideas will change around that. I mean, that's already started to happen, and there's a new all-party group on women, for example, women at work, and that's one of the major things which IPSE support, exactly, which is one of the major areas that, as I say, that keep coming up are around all the things we've discussed today, whether that's maternity cover or childcare, caring, etc. So I think, and as I say, I think there are some very strong women who are new in Parliament and very keen to make a difference. So I'm positive about that, actually, very positive about that. And in fact, the all-party group has had a really good start. It's got a lot of parliamentarians interested. So I think that's, we're going in the right direction.
Thank you. Emma, final thought?
I feel like Cruella de Vil, because I'm going to have to say, I do, because I feel as if it is already happening. So we're looking at opening a new business hub in a place called Borden in Hampshire. And our lady on the ground who's leading it already has been approached by a nursery operator. So we haven't even announced it. We haven't even signed any deals to do this thing. And a nursery operator has approached her and said, I want a space for 58 children. I can see that this is co-working on site. As I say, I've just heard this one lady say she's doing it in the northeast. So to me, I feel it's happening, and I feel the government support comes in because they're giving the nursery operators the ability to get part funding. So I guess always with policies towards government, I would question, if I'm in government, would my response be, we feel as if we're kind of taking care of that, we're kind of doing something on it. What I think they are kind of looking for is, okay, that's an area where we haven't even touched it, we haven't even considered it, we didn't even know it was an issue. Whereas this one, I feel that they're kind of quite on it. So I feel like Cruella de Vil in saying, I'm out.
You're out. If you're Cruella de Vil, does that make you the Labrador?
Yeah.
I know.
No,
These poor little children who aren't going to be taken care of.
Dalmatian.
Yeah, I'm definitely in.
You're in,
Yeah.
Penny?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Cruella. I'm with the orphans on this. I'm in. It's a great idea. Just needs more exposure.
Two dragons in, one dragon out. What is your view, ladies and gentlemen? Pick up your voting pads, please, and we will have our vote as before. A for in, B for out.
Not enough responses.
No.
We're not going to hit the magic
You
50
won't. No,
this
we're
time. That'll do us. And the result is
Hey.
77 in, 23 out.
Rather dodgy pitch, thank you.
10 votes. Congratulations. Thank you very much. And our final pitch is Dave Jackson, who's the chairman of Hudson, and his pitch is on training for the construction sector. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Will you just give me a one, when we get to the right part? Yes, I work in the construction sector, and a recent report said that the construction sector, because it has an ageing workforce, needs 120,000 more tradespeople by the end of this Parliament. This to meet George Osborne's projections of we need infrastructure projects and we need to build, or we need to increase the number of houses that we're building so we can aim to build 400,000 new houses per year. So a report says we're short on skills training, and what I have to tell you is that the national institution that is the Construction Industry Training Board is failing this industry in training new people to come into this industry with the right skill set in increasing numbers. And I should know because I've just gone through a judicial review against the Training Board and their 2015 Levy Act. Now, without getting complicated, it's going to take levy from the people at the bottom, and it's going to take a disproportionate amount of levy from freelancers, 1.25% of all payments, as opposed to 0.5% for employed people. And the further you go up the construction chain, the people at the top, the main contractors, the contractors whose name is on the tower cranes, will end up paying nothing under the new levy order, which won't increase a training facility for those who are working on a freelance basis. The new levy order is a perverse twist of levy collection, which was presented to the construction sector as a simplification, and it is not. It is not a simplification. Already, those at the top are taking a disproportionate amount of grants to aid their training programs, whereas the small SME building companies who rely on a flexible labour force to meet the fluctuations of demands for the specific services that they offer, they're the ones that engage the freelancers, and yet the training board set up to service the industry is denying those SMEs the ability to get grants to train freelancers. There is a block on it, and there is an over-bureaucratic process to try and overcome that block. And I'll give you a fiscal example.
30 seconds.
Carillion, one of the biggest national construction companies, took £8 million out more than it paid in to the training board. And it's only going to get worse under the 2015 levy order. So, my proposition to the panel is, would you propose scrapping the Construction Industry Training Board and leaving the freelance sector to service the needs of training in the workplace, or would you reform it in order to democratise training?
Thank you. The exercise is your pitch. How do you answer that question?
I was just about
yourself?
to say, I was hoping you were coming back to me because I was going to say that question right back at you.
Scrap it. Because the construction sector does not need state aid, and in fact our European partners would argue that it is wrong to give some construction firms grants as a form of state aid for training, whilst freelancers do not have access to the same training.
So what would your solution be?
Well, training in the construction sector is already made by private providers, and those SMEs that can't get access to grants, either because they are told that a grant is not available to train freelancers because that company is not employing those individuals directly, there is a freelance training provision that already exists. Scrap the state one, expand the private sector.
Do you have any vested interest in that one that exists? You don't own it?
I don't provide a training
Okay.
service at all, no.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry,
So
Karen.
just a tiny other. Have you other people in the construction sector? Are they behind you, or because I'm guessing these big companies, they're against what you're saying? What kind of levels of support have you got from the industry?
The big companies were part of the consultation process. Well, if the big companies are making £8 million a year in one instance,
They're gonna
and that's
support
a published fact,
Right.
it's not in their vested interest to say scrap the training board, which is something of a national institution. I mean, the levy is almost a form of tax. Those that pay in is, in theory, every construction firm in the country, whether you're employing 3 people or 30,000 people. Those that take out are those with the bureaucratic staff and people to fight their way through the state-aided provision for training. Whereas those with a sharp need for training, and you cannot work on a building site these days without a skills card. So if you've got a group of workers who will come and do the job for you, but the skills card needs updating, you're not going to go through the grant system, because at the end of all the bureaucracy, you're not going to get a grant anyway, because you're engaging with freelancers. So you pay the dollar and the private sector steps in, gives you the training that you need, the guys get the skills card, and the freelancers actually use the skills card at the moment as a means by which to crank up the rates of pay that they can command as freelancers, because the demand for their services exceeds their availability at the moment. And
Thank
it's
you.
a rising market.
Dragons, 2 minutes left.
The private sector obviously enjoys grants and help to train people. If it didn't have any access to that, do you think training standards would reduce? Do you think the CITB helps to maintain standards within the industry to some
I think
degree?
the CITB would like everyone in the industry to think that they help raise standards, but the things that raise standards is health and safety. Unequivocally, the health and safety requirements and the legislation that goes with putting people to work on a building site these days means that there is only one safe method of working, and that's the safe method of working whether you're employed or whether you're freelance on the building sites. That's what's driven up standards. That's what's brought mortality rates down. That's what brought injury rates down. That's what makes for safer scaffolding, safer excavation. It's health and safety standards. It's not the training board.
Is it the principle of putting money into a pot where only a few get the benefit
That's
that you're
exactly.
against? Or is it the principle of the people putting money in the pot but not freelancers getting access to it?
Both instances are a correct experience of mine. Yeah, I've experienced both sides.
And you think scrapping it altogether would help that? And having
Well,
something in its stead?
When a state-aided, or what is a government quango, so it is a state-aided funded scheme, invented in 1962, when there were in fact 28 training boards brought into being, now there's only 2 left. Norman Tebbit took an axe in the Tory years, the Thatcher years, to a lot of the training boards because they were no longer fit for purpose. My suggestion is now is the time to look closely at what the CITB are doing and apply the same logic. Are they fit for purpose? Because it's my belief and the experience of my client base, and I work for a lot of construction companies, that it is no longer fit for purpose, and this latest incarnation of the 2015 Levy Act will make matters worse for SMEs and for freelancers.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think the previous point is right. It's two parts of the proposal. One is about the inequity, which I think you've got the point across. But then let's go to the solution then. So it's the levy is scrapped. Can you just talk us through how it would work in just without a levy, then, particularly in relation to, let's say, financially vulnerable firms and, let's say, workers who wouldn't be able to self-train or...
The larger institutions have got their own in-house, that is to say, the larger building firms have already got their own in-house training facilities. So they will have an intake of apprentices and they will bring them up through trade skills. My analysis and experience is that those larger firms get a state subsidy. A medium-sized firm outsources that training to a private sector, applies for the grants, and if the workforce is directly employed or there is an apprentice training scheme, they do have some access to grants. But if it's a case of taking the freelance proportion of the workforce...
This is how it will work or how it is working?
This is how it works
now.
No, but how will it work when you scrap the levy?
How will it work when you scrap it?
Yeah.
The training schemes will still exist. They simply won't have the benefit of state aid. And those larger firms won't have the benefit of actually creating a profit out of the state aid, whereas those who are freelancing, because there is such a demand for their skill sets at the moment, in order to get trained bricklayers or bricklayers who are partially trained or need the next skills grade, the private sector through supply and demand will meet that need.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure that answered the question you asked, but let's go to the conclusion. In or out?
I'm in.
In, Penny?
I'm out because I think the industry needs to recognise that they, although are training people, perhaps the wrong groups of people or the right groups of people and not everyone, there is actually a huge amount of untapped skills out there in the form of female employees, which the STEM sector hasn't really got to grips with yet. Just 6%, national average, 6% of apprentices are female going into STEM sector companies. I'd like to see more emphasis on training a whole load of people. And yes, freelancers need to be paid attention to, but I don't think scrapping it altogether would actually address the very issue that you set out to solve.
Thank you, Emma.
Definitely in.
Okay. 2 in, 1 out. Ladies and gentlemen, your chance to decide, your opportunity to vote on the scrapping of the CITB levy, scrapping the training board levy and introducing a new scheme instead. A if you're in, B if you're out. Last few votes trickling in. Let's take the answer.
Oh.
And a big vote of support. Dave Jackson, thank you very much. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation as well. There are 2 groups of people that I'd like you to give a round of applause to. The first round of applause is to our pitchers, so please thank Roberto Caminelli, Matt Darling, Jane Bowles and Dave Jackson. Thank you very much to the 4 of you. And please thank our fantastic dragons, Emma Jones, Penny Hasman and Professor Andy Bates. Thank you very much. Thank you.